All praise, our glory, our honor, most certainly due to the Most High. And peace to you in the name of His Son. I count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you. Preach the word of God, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's topic, and it is simply the duties of a man according to the Bible. The duties of a man according to the Bible. You know, men obviously are husbands and fathers, and although many bear that title, they don't understand what that means in function. Please do. So I want to deal with what the Bible says about that, and there's some things that we as men must do that the Bible is clearly telling us that we need to do, and because we're not doing it, we're seeing that our families are in disarray. And one thing, beautiful thing about His Word is that it tells us, if you didn't know, let's say you grew up without a father, or your father wasn't there, he wasn't a good father, it shows you how to be a father and even how to be a husband. We're going to look at that very briefly today. This is 1 Timothy, the 5th chapter. 1 Timothy, the 5th chapter, because there's something basic that you have to do. And if you are not doing it, you are simply not doing what you're supposed to do. As the head of your household. The man is the strength of the household. Okay. He is the backbone of the household. And so 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8, it says, but if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he have denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. Okay. So one thing you must do is you have to provide financially. You have to give provisions to your household. And if you don't, you're worse than an infidel. Don't talk about what you believe in the Most High. He said, you worse than a non-believer. Paul says that if you don't do this, I can remember I talk about this all the time, because this is something that I'll never forget. At least I don't think I will. A young student, a young teen was talking one day, talking about her father. She said, father never did anything for her or her mother, her siblings. But I always was talking about God. And I just thought about this excerpt here, that he, why are you talking about him if you're not going to provide? And I'm not talking about if you've been providing and you fell on hard times and you're trying your best and you got laid off and you steady looking, you really, I'm not talking about that. He's not talking about, he's talking about the one that just basically not doing anything for the family. And I've known men who call themselves in the word, I don't even like using that term, that expression, that have done that. That, they have not provided anything for their children. But now let's go to Genesis, the 18th chapter, because in addition to giving provisions, there's something else you need to do. Okay, this is Genesis, the 18th chapter. Here we see it in the example of the patriarch Abraham. This is Genesis, the 18th chapter, and we want to pick it up at verse 17. Genesis, the 18th chapter and verse 17. Genesis, the 18th chapter and verse 17. It says, and the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? So do I need to hide from Abraham what I'm doing? He says, saying that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. He's the father of many nations. He says, then he says something. He said, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. So he knew the character of Abraham. He knew what kind of man he was. He said he knew he was going to command his children and his household after him. Men should understand that you are the head of the household. I'm going to say it again. You are the head of the household, and it is up to you to lead the household spiritually. That's up to men to do. And so that means you have to have a relationship with the Most High. You have to understand his word. So he said, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household. Again, you are the one in your house. You're supposed to have dominion, and you're supposed to be leading your household in the proper direction, in the right direction. Let's go to the book of Joshua. Because Joshua, he mentioned this similar thing in this charge that he gave to the children of Israel. This is Joshua, the 24th chapter. We're going to pick it up in the 14th verse. Joshua 24 and verse 14. Because here, when he's charging them, he mentions this same thing. Joshua 24 verse 14 says, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. Right? Even we read in John that God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Right? So he said, worship him. He says, serve him in sincerity and in truth. And then he said, put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood. Now he said, putting away the gods that your father served on the other side of the river Euphrates, because they crossed over. That's what Hebrew means. Okay. When they crossed over. And so the fathers he's talking about is Abraham's fathers, even before him, and what they would what they would worship. They worshiped falsely. That's why he called him out of that hub of false worship. So it says, he says, and put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood or the river. And then it says, and in Egypt. Okay. Now, when he says, and in Egypt, we should understand that he's talking about the gods that they were serving in that sojourn in Egypt. Just like we over here worshiping falsely. Everywhere we go, we worshiping falsely amongst the people. So he says, and if it seemed, verse 15, and if it seemed evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your father served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. Then he says something that's key, that's pertinent to what I'm talking about. He said, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So just like he knew, the Most High knew that what Abraham would do, Joshua is expressing that he would do the same thing. He said, listen, I'm telling you to serve him. You need to make a decision though. Don't be lukewarm. Make a decision. But I'm going to tell you, me and my house, this is the direction we're going. And that's how men have to be in their household. You have a lot of times men passive and they don't take the initiative to be the head spiritually in their homes. You are responsible. It's not just something. I'm a man. You are responsible. You know, you can destroy your whole household by not teaching them what thus saith the Lord, leading them in the wrong direction. That's on you. Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. Because even as a father, that's what men are, fathers and husbands. And as a father, there's something you need to do with your children. Obviously, one we just read was provide. We talk about lead a household, right? But you have to lead them in what thus saith the Lord. And therefore, you have to teach them what thus saith the Lord. This is Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. And we're going to pick it up at verse 5. Now here Moses proclaims, behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do so in the land whither you go to possess it. He says, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. See, the wisdom and understanding wasn't of Israel of itself. It was rather the oracles that were given unto Israel. That's why Paul said, what advantage doth have the Jew? What profit is there of circumcision? Much chiefly in every way, for unto them were committed the oracles of God. He said, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Then he tells you why. But what nation is there so great who have God so nigh unto them as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which I set before you this day? Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. And he says something, but teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons, from generation to generation to generation. Now let's go to the book of Ephesians, because that's what you're supposed to do as a father. What men are fathers and husbands in a household. Okay, so what are you supposed to do as a husband? Let's find out. The Bible, like I said, if you don't know how to be a father, the Bible tells you how to be a father. If you don't know how to be a husband, the Father is telling you how to be a husband. You don't know how to be a man, it's telling you how to function. Ephesians, the 5th chapter, and this is it. Ephesians, the 5th chapter, and I'm going to pick it up at verse 25. Ephesians 5 and verse 25, it reads, husbands, love your wives, So now a husband is to love his wife. Then it says, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Okay, so if you look at the sacrifice that he made, that was love. That the offering that he made, that was love. Okay, so now that's what men ought to do for their wives, and it's reciprocal, because we're gonna find out what the woman's supposed to do. Not today, Lord willing. Next time I'll come before you. So it said, husband, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. And he says something. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. So you're not beating yourself, right? So that's that. Y'all are one. So he says, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord of the church. For we are members of his body and of his flesh and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. So when you want to understand how you're supposed to deal with your wife, look at how Christ dealt with the church as far as loving the church. So he said, husband, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for. And love love don't mean being a dope or being a simp or a yes man. Love is doing that sometimes, which is hard. Doing that which is best for the household. Okay, that's what's best for your wife. That's what it is, and you have to stand on that. Okay, so that's just what it means according to the Bible, as far as what you should do as husbands and fathers, as men. Peace to you, brother Isaiah. And with that, I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith, meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. If you've been edified through the ministry, you can leave a donation. These proceeds go to the work of the ministry. We truly appreciate all those who have donated. In addition, there are books. Oh, let me say this before I say that. We have Bible study every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom. If you look at the description of this video, you can see information on how to be a part of that if you would like to. I believe they're very edifying. Also, there are books that are available. Into Egypt Again with These are all available on Amazon.com right now. We still dealing with the website. But Into Egypt Begin with Ships. The pagan origins of Christian holidays, Hell Like War, Feel Like Burn Brass, Killing Black Innocents, For Then Shall Be Great Tribulation, and In Defense of Biblical Polygyny. All these books are available on Amazon.com and other places where books are sold. And with that, brothers and sisters, so it's my prayer that you are edified.